subset of INTOSI. INTOSI is an international audit organization. INTOSI is divided geographically according to the world. Like there's EuroSci, AsiaSci, PASI represents the the island governments in the South Pacific, such as New Caledonia, with the exception of Tahiti, Vanuatu, PNG, the Cook Islands. There's about 20 plus members, including the what is known as the APIPA members, who are members of PASI. And Guam OPA will be hosting that in September of 2013. That in some summarizes our request. I'll be more than happy to, me and our staff be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to just go over the analysis, of course, by OPA, OFB, and that your office and OPA's budget request to OFB that there is a 6% increase in your base appropriations as compared to the current, and then and that the increase, of course, in appropriation is due to the increase in salaries, benefits, requests for travel, additional equipment, and the hosting of a conference. So that's, like a summary of why then there is that increase. So for when you compare 2012, of course, and 2013 request, is that for you have for base operation, which excludes your insurance benefits, you were at $1.26 million, and your request is $1.3 million request. That's a 5% increase. For your insurance benefits, you are going from 41,881 to increase to 57,244, so that's a 37% increase. There's no increase or anything for water and power, so the total then request is from 1.3 million, $302 million, $388,000 to 1,375,533 with that 6% increase. And I'm having to repeat this all the time with all of the departments and agencies that are coming in, is that the executive request a decrease of $1.8 million in appropriation for semi-autonomous agencies, which is more than, of course, what your department's current fiscal year base appropriation. The agencies, I guess, that are included in the semi-autonomous agencies are the Mayor's Council, the Attorney General's Office, the courts, Public Defender, the Legislature, OFB, and OPA. So there is that lump sum in which the governor had submitted actually for the semi-autonomous agencies, and basically saying, this is the lump sum, but you're going to have to find $1.8 million to cut. And that, of course, will be definitely a daunting task, a challenging task for OFB to address then the needs of the semi-autonomous agencies with this significant request of a decrease by the executive branch for all the semi-autonomous agencies.
If I could comment, Madam?
Yes.
One suggestion would be, because if you did this proportionately, OPA would be very nominal, because when you add the legislature, the courts, who were the agency, OFB?
OPA,
The Mayor's Council.
The Mayor's Council,
those,
the AG's office.
Yes,
Yes.
proportionately. I mean, we're 1 million, 1.2 million compared, and that total is going to be over $30 million. Okay, so proportionately, if you were to do this, 1.8, and you did this proportionately, I don't have my calculator in front of me, but if you were to add all of those up, the amount that would be given to OPA would be more than equivalent to the lapses already that we have incurred. That's what I said in the beginning. Let us not be penny wise and pound foolish as to where can be some of those the changes, and maybe the legislature needs to step back and look at things more holistically as where can you make significant changes, and are there going to be significant changes like in the areas that have significant amounts of overtime and things of that nature, because that's where the money is. You can, pardon the expression, nickel and dime OPA to death, and it's easy to do it because it's a tiny budget. Most people won't look at the, it's easy to look at a tiny budget compared to a big budget as to where to cut, and you can very easily identify it. You take away all of the vacancies, you got it there. So you could very easily, out of $1.8 million, sock it to us, so to speak, by giving us $300,000 out of the $1.8 million. But is that proportional? Is that proportional to what we want to give? That's really, I understand where you're coming from. I don't say your task is easy, okay? But I think there needs to be some equitable way in which to do this, and let's look outside of the box for where can we find monies, and where can the significant savings in. The governor said every agency has to give 15%. We knew with all of our lapses that we would be able to do that from the get-go, because it continues. As I said, we have had recruitment problems, not 1 year, not 2 years, but for the last 5 years. That high that we had in 2007 of 18 people, we've never been able to get up there at all. The likelihood of that happening in the near future is probably slim to none. That's why I do ask that we continue to retain, because at some point we did have that there. And I know that someday we will be. It's just that every time we 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, so that's why we haven't moved too far from the area there. It's fortunate it's only 1.8 million out of, because and just adding 24 million for the judiciary, 7 million or to 8 or 10 million to the AG's office, I believe is the number. The Mayor's Council, I forget, is what, 5 million, 6 million? Yeah. So if you were adding all of those, and we're $1 million.
8 million.
8 million? So when you add all of those up, in proportion, we probably don't even make up 10%. We won't make up 10% of that number. All right. So if you're to do it, how you look at it, that's the challenge you're going to have to decide. But one suggestion is to do it proportionately. All right. And don't give people a disproportionate share, because I always say when DOA holds back my $20,000 check every month, and I said, wow, that really helped you, right? Not process the payroll, yeah, 20, that's about what we get, what, $25,000, a month. Man, that's really going to save this government, and that's what it's been for the last 5 years. But we have contributed in the sense that we're very selective in who we recruit. We don't hire any Tom, Dick, and Harry. We're like the Marines. We just would need a few good men and women. We're very selective in that process. In fact, when we had somebody who was a preferential, didn't fit our thing, and so said no. Despite the fact that we have recruiting problems, we still are very selective as to who, because that's where you make the biggest difference at that recruitment area. So even though we had all these vacancies, we still said no, because it didn't fit our what we felt was, and we go through a very elaborate recruiting area. We have 4 different, 3 be at the panel and 3 more, if they make it to round 2, then I'm in there again recruiting. So despite the recruitment, we are selective, in that area. So I understand, Madam Speaker, the problem of this government. Please take a look at our audit reports. We continue to identify areas of improvement, cost-saving areas. If half the audit recommendations were were implemented, we'd have significant savings. I recognize a lot of this also is political. These are benefits that have been around a long time. Let me just mention you mentioned the $115,000. Of that amount, half of that is primarily due to the retirement contribution rate that continues to go up. Retirement and benefits make up 41% of if I'm paying a person $50,000, I have to add another 41% or another $20,000 for the retirement and the benefits. The unfunded liability continues to increase. The government of Guam had 28% retirement contribution. It's not the highest in the country, but it is among the highest. Okay, and that number, part of that is due to what is being charged for health care as well as retirement. So you don't have much in the pie to cut unless we really look at all of those things, holistically. If I had a status quo at the same number of people, it would automatically go up by 4%. Of the total, just purely because of retirement contribution and health care. You do nothing, it's going to go up a minimum of 4%. How much more when you have overtime and everything else? I know that is contributing.
Now you're asking what, and the mayors did earlier also, is requesting for carryover. And as you do budgets, of course, audits, is that I want to ask a general question then, is that normally a recommended practice as an auditor, of course, for any department and agencies or all departments and agencies is to request for a carryover when we know that there is no cash backing up the appropriations.
We've lived with it. I think what becomes problematic, Madam Speaker, is if you give it to some and not to others. Okay, I heard you say that you wanted to have the bush cutting, the grass cutting on the schools, not by a select few. It's either all or none. The carryover, if you're going to make a stance on the carryover, then it should be a stance that is equitably applied. Don't give a few because they can, because they can market better, because they've got a bigger budget, that privilege, and then you give some of the few who, are not. Where I'm looking for is equity. If you don't give it to anybody, then I think all of us will be okay. But if you give it to some and not to others, that's where it becomes problematic. We're looking for equity and fairness.
But the question, though, that I asked is that, we all know that carryovers, there's no cash backing that up at all. And is that then a recommended practice that auditors would give the government to do or not? You've made recommendations.
I've not made any recommendations in that area.
You're right.
So
I'm asking you that question, though. Is that a recommended practice for governments to do?
With or without the carryover, the fundamental problem that the legislature has, the government of Guam has, and if you were to look at the next 2011 audit, which will be coming out probably by next week, there are a lot of agencies, a lot of areas where were not budgeted at all. And so here we're talking about only just the budgeted process, but there's a new finding in that compliance report, and I've asked for greater details about they identified X millions of dollars that were, quote, unbudgeted, but were held to the standard because they were obligations. And that's, to me, the greater problem that we have as opposed to the carryover. The carryover, at least, is within law. It is appropriated, okay? It's allowed, and it is accounted for. What is not accounted for is expenditures made without appropriation. And that's in the budget. At least with a carryover, you have an audit trail, to show how much was and how much, if any, was expended. And let me just say, as I were to look back at all of our lapses over the last 4 to 5 years, we have not ever had to use any of those carryovers. We're one of the few agencies. This is just a tool that maybe one day we might need it. Okay. But if you were to look at our budget, we've never had to use it. We've always lived within the actual appropriated amount, separate from the carryover. We've always given back more. So it could be a sure bet on the part of OPA that if you give it to us, it will be returned, unlike other agencies who will utilize it.
We saw, of course, an increase in new computer equipment, and for fiscal year 13. For the current year, your appropriation for equipment was $9,450. Now you're requesting for an additional $11,100 for equipment. Can you please explain?
That's a detail I don't know.
Yeah, you have software upgrade of $10,000, laptop computers $4,500, desktop computers $3,900, printers $2,700. A total equipment will be $21,100.
Yeah. Good morning, Madam Speaker. If I may, what we were asking for in this 2013 proposal was particularly dealing with the first item, software upgrade. We are currently on a Microsoft Office 2003 version, and in doing a request for quotes, we were informed that the 2007, which would have been the next upgrade up, they're not necessarily selling it anymore, and so the recommendation is to move to 2010. And in doing so, we were doing some research, and because our office, we do have desktops and we do have laptops. Some of the staff, when they have a desktop in the office, when we're required to go out on the field, we do use a laptop, and so those require separate licenses for each of the equipment that we have. And so in order to make sure that we do a one-shot upgrade for all the equipment, it would cost us a big amount of money, and so this is what we were asking for. It's mainly the upgrade from our current 2003 Office to a 2010 version.
Let me just say, for every computer and every laptop you have to have a separate license. We were trying to work with, at one time, the BIT to try to get us a multi-license, but that has, for whatever reason, still continues to be very problematic. Mm-hmm. And what would happen is if one is on a 2000, we actually had people still on 2003.
2000.
Mm-hmm. Even 2000. I mean, that's how old some of our things are. And when they send something out and they got it back in 2007 version, they could not read it, and vice versa. I could not read things too. I mean, I'm always the odd one out. So what we wanted to do was just make everybody uniform on an entire platform, so all the computers can talk to us, and that was what that is for.
Yes. And so moving to talk about the other items, every budget request, I believe we do ask for certain things, such as a few laptops, desktop computers, as well as printers. As you know, over time, they do get run down, and they do need to be replaced. And so currently speaking, our equipment, we have enough in the office. at this point to be able to sustain the staff. However, if we do get new additional staff, which of course, as the public auditor has mentioned, we're in the process of trying to recruit, we would not have equipment for those staff. Or, of course, there's always times where we would have equipment failures, and so we want to be able to ensure that we have, adequate equipment in order to ensure that the staff are working productively rather than just sitting there, because over time, some of the computers too that we have, they tend to get slower as the years go by, and rather than making sure that the staff are efficiently, completing their assignments, they're having to sit there and trying to work around the problems that they're facing within the current equipment that they're having to use. And so we're just hoping to be able to give everybody in the office the opportunity to be efficient and productive.
How do you back up your information?
We currently have a server right now, and we do have two, I believe it's 1 terabyte external hard drives. But aside from that, the server itself that we have does have kind of like a fail-safe feature where it's, I believe there's, I forget the technical term of it, but there is something within the system that mirrors each other. And so if one of the processes fail or whatever, it goes on to the backup. But aside from that, we do have the two 1 terabyte external hard drives. One is being backed up on a daily basis. The other is being backed up on a weekly basis. So that way, if for whatever reason we lose data, we should be able to pick up the data from the day prior or the week prior.
Can you access that from outside of the office?
No.
That's my other concern. What happens if you can't?
If we can't.
If you can't go to the office?
If we can't go to the office, as far as using the data, you mean, or
what happens if? One of the areas that Homeland Security has been stressing with government entities is redundancy and your emergency operations plans as to being able to operate in another facility should your facility be compromised. So
we would not be able to. If the server went down completely or was compromised, then we're dead in the water.
And years and years and years of studies and everything's gone. So if we were to today, after this meeting, if you for some odd reason just can't get back to your office but you still need to operate, do you have a place to operate, and can you operate? Can you just pick up and
not in its entirety, but I believe, for example, so
have you looked into that?
That's a good. You raise a very good question. I'm in my office. I'm the odd man out because I'm the only one on Mac. Everybody else is on Windows. I don't even touch the server. I don't even want to go to the server.
Yeah.
We did have an incident when someone internally made a mistake and accidentally deleted files. We had to implement new protocols on that one. But the server is the only physical way that you can access any.
So can I suggest? And I recognize that you're going to need new equipment. Everybody's going to need equipment. I understand and I know your concerns with regards. But maybe we should concentrate on that first. Because you can buy all the brand new equipment you want, but if you can't access it.
Well, we'll have a discussion with who's that? Dimensions, who services our server, and talk and what they say. Are you saying that we should be able to access all of our data?
What I'm saying is, there is technology that's available that should your office be compromised, and you're obviously key component to the functions, to the operations of the government, with a lot of valuable information, necessary not just for the efficiency, to promote the efficiency, but for improvements within the government. If we can't access it, you can't access it. We can buy all the brand new equipment in the world that we want, but if our server goes down or your building gets compromised, your office gets compromised.
Very good comment.
Okay.
We'll have that discussion, and thank you for raising that. We appreciate it.
Can you explain further exactly what PASI is? And because I know the islands, at least you started to mention, are like in the South Pacific areas, but we have the judiciary who really work. They have this association with all of the regions of Micronesia. The MCES, the Micronesian Chiefs and Executives, are the exact same regions again, and then you've got the Pacific Island Legislature, same region. This is something that's just totally out of, so maybe you can explain how that happened.
Guam became, actually, PASI has been around a long time. Guam OPA only became a member in 2005, and it was only, I believe, in 2007 or 8 where PASI really took off as far as being able to provide training programs and other things that have become truly helpful to Guam OPA. PASI is actually funded by 3 different organizations, Aussie Aid, which is Australian Aid, New Zealand Aid, the World Bank, and the IMF are the contributors to PASI. One of the biggest ongoing disputes that the PASI members have is that the U.S. has not been a contributor to PASI, yet all of the flag territories as well as the FSM and related, trust territories are members of PASI, and that has been a long ongoing dispute. So that's the organization. In the last 2 to 3 years, I've been able to send at least half a dozen of the staff to trainings. In fact, Jarek just came back from a 2-week for what is it, intermediate auditors for training that PASI had. Yeah. So your question again, who are they?
Well, no, I mean, because you mentioned South Pacific, I'm just wondering whether...
Yes, it's primarily those countries plus the APIPA countries. Altogether, there's about 20 plus members.
Yeah. It was actually formerly known as PASI, which was the South Pacific, but with the inclusion of the Micronesian Islands, they dropped the South, and that's how it became PASI, with the inclusion of the Northern Mariana Islands.
So what's the, I mean...
The benefit?
Well, not just the benefit as well, because, I mean, I'm thinking that if you audit, of course, it's an audit no matter where it is. You know, what country, you know, they do their audits. But I'm just concerned now is that, of course, you've taken advantage by having to send one individual. What would you do if we're unable to fund this particular conference?
Wow, I'd have to let them know right away so they can get another host. I mean, in fairness, that announcement has already been made. So if it's not funded, either that or Guam's going to look like a real poor host when they come. Okay.
No, and the reason why we asked, because we just finished having our General Assembly as well for the APIL.
Mm-hmm.
And the question, of course, is that who's going to host? And prior to, you know, anyone making a commitment, there has to be a commitment that there will be some, you know, funding as well, that they'll be able then, you know, to do this. So, and some time is given to come back to the association to say, I can't do it, then there will be an alternative, you know, country.
As I mentioned, what happened last year when I went to Tonga, that's where the PASI was. I did not volunteer to be a member, to host, okay. I was asked by the executive director if I would be a host. And kind of like the Chamorro way, you don't say no when someone asks you something, right? You say yes. And it was after the fact. Now, if it's the legislature's intent that they don't want, please let me know now so that I will send a letter to say that there's no funding and I apologize, I cannot. So I would certainly want to know that right away before, in the next month or two, because I think in fairness, the host meeting, the next meeting is being in New Caledonia in October, and I think in fairness, I think I need to let the organization know. So if that is your desire, then so be it. That's the legislature's decision.
So do you know what it entails? The $10,000 expenses, is this to pay the way
the hosting
for all?
of the hotel, to have the meeting, the lunches, and the dinners. And usually on the third day, they want to have a tour of the island to see, what area. And what I was planning already was that we would take them down to see the operations of the solid waste, area. See the consolidation there, and then take them down to that. So all of that requires busing, right? Providing lunch, and all. So it's the hotel, of course, will be paid by each of the members, but the actual room, remember, depending on the number, there will either be a fee to host a charge by the hotel. I don't know yet what those charges will be, because I have not yet gone out on an RFP.
You've been doing, of course, I know, audits, and indicated, like you said earlier, is that you've given examples of where these departments and agencies can cut back. And you mentioned, of course, one in particular, that the non-productive pay for the fire department. In any of these, and one of the largest, of course, where the governor, or the previous, rather, legislatures have actually put a lump sum for overtime, because that seems to be a really exorbitant amount. I think at one time we were paying $10 million. So if that is the case, then my question out to you then is that jumping on the bandwagon, asking also for overtime for your people when we're trying to cut back with overtime. And the question always, the reason for trying to increase the number of cycles to recruit, firefighters, is to actually reduce the cost of then overtime.
I understand where you're coming from. It seems like I'm speaking with both ends of my mouth on that. Again, I've been having continuous recruitment problems all these years. I've never used overtime before. I'm now asking for it. Plain and simple.
And have you submitted your recommendations for some of these cuts to the Deficit Reduction Committee? Because there is that reality of cutting $43 million.
I'm not a member of the Deficit Reduction Committee. I attended when I heard about it. Then when I mentioned, quote, that area, there was another meeting on it. And again, I put in my 2 cents, and that's all I can do.
Senator Yamashita, any question or comments? Senator on the time?
I'm just curious, the POSI,
Yes.
why would they want to see the solid waste facility?
There's been a concern, the new transfer station. Well, for one thing, as I've gone around, Guam has the most modern now solid waste facility among all of the islands. When in other areas, that's still very problematic. So I was just trying to decide where would I take them. What would be appropriate for them to see, and I was just, because we were involved in a solid waste cooperative audit about concerns, how is solid waste being handled among all of the member countries, who has problems with what, so there was an audit in that area, and what I saw, Guam was further ahead because we do have a very now modern landfill. So I thought they could, just see it, and, I'd be open to other suggestions as to where to take them. But I'm not so sure now, given the speaker's comment. Maybe we may not be hosting it at all.
Well, maybe just to give you some suggestions as well, similar to, again, to how we've done ours, is that we actually have solicited for, organizations or institutions to either host a lunch, and then we have somebody else host, the dinner. Of course, the facility, we always use our own legislative building, but in this case, I don't know how many people you're talking about. But
It's a small group, not more than 50.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, well, and ours was, basically the same. We had 50 this last week. But those are some of the ways in which we've also cut our costs, because we know that it's, this is not, that we don't have the money for it. But many different ways to look at it as well, in terms of actually, cutting back your cost. So anyway, it's 12.
I did have one more
I'm
question.
sorry.
I just, wanted to be assured, if you're not given additional funding and not allowed to hire any more personnel, would you be able to function? You've managed so far.
We're just barely managing. There was a time, when we were so small that I think it became a demoralizing factor. People, who else is next? Am I going to be next? And when morale is low, the productivity is low. I think when there's, so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if the that's a message that that OPA is not needed, not wanted, and so on. So if you do that, so that sends a very strong message that we're not needed in this government. And then people will begin to look elsewhere, and no one will come. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Thank you. Well, I don't think that is the sentiment of, the legislature or the government, to say that, OPA's, the office is not, needed, because you can use the same argument with revenue and taxation, where the legislature continues to try to support it because they're going out to bring in the money, and yet they're still not, receiving the amount that they need to be able to accomplish just that. So it's just that, and I'm sure you know that as well, is that these are really very hard times. And
Sure.
And of course, the deficit, reduction committee needs to really look at all of the audits that you've submitted, and seriously look at that. And it's unfortunate that, they're saying, well, we're going to look at the Evergreen audit and cut DOE, there, but yet we've got this big, dollar amount, $43 million, for other departments and agencies, and there are recommendations, and yet we don't see any action being taken other than to say, we're going to give the legislature this lump sum. You decide now how you want to cut everybody. So, they've thrown that, back to the legislature.
And
when there is that, deficit reduction committee.
And I sympathize with the senators. It's a daunting task. We need to work closely with the administration as to where, because I don't envy you one bit. I would not want to be in your shoes in that regard.
Thank you. Okay. So it is 12 noon, and I want to thank you very much for coming in this morning. And of course, any other input that you may have, the committee is always open to receive them until such time that we finalize, the budget packet for August. So that concludes at least our public hearing for the Office of Public Accountability, and we will resume at 1 p.m. this afternoon for the Guam Election Commission. So
Thank you very much.
we are in recess.